Hello, and welcome to that Encyclopedia podcast. As usual, with your hosts, me, Will, and of course, Jacob.
Hello.
Today, we're doing another spotlight for you on a very special topic, the Knights Hospitaller, also known as the Order of the Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem. So, Jacob, have you heard of the Order of the Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem?
I believe I have, though I don't know very much about them, except perhaps that they're associated with the crusades, and I think they still exist, technically. Is that true?
That is true. That's one of the one of the stranger facts of this knightly order of Saint John of Jerusalem is that they do indeed still exist. In fact, they actually have an observer seat at the United Nations. So they are still recognized by many countries um, as sort of having their own what do you call it, sovereign status. So there are only a couple of like non-country observers at the United Nations. I think there's observer status for like an Olympic body. Oh yeah, there's a few. There's quite a few. I'm looking at it now, but it mostly includes um, sort of international organizations that like the Association of Caribbean States, the Asian Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, Latin American Parliament, all these sorts of like um, multinational entities that do work that might pertain to the work of the United Nations. There are only a few in this little section. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article now for United Nations General Assembly observers, and the Sovereign Military Order of Malta is what it is known here, which is an interesting name. There doesn't seem to be anything quite like it with a seat at the UN. I mean, it's called a military order, but the military order does not have a military, and it also does not have any territory. But within
You
the
know, it sounds like the perfect recipe for conspiracy theorists. You know, like an ancient organization with ostensibly influence at the UN under the name Sovereign Military. I'm surprised that I don't see it come up in insane discussions on the internet with regularity, to be honest.
possibly because there's it the problem is, Jacob, if you talk about something being like an obvious place for conspiracy theories to arise, that's the problem. If it seems like a good idea for a conspiracy, it's likely to not be popular. You need a conspiracy that really shakes the status quo. You know, I'd more likely to have a conspiracy theory that the University for Peace that sits on the UN is actually a underground pro-war world order of sowing dissent internationally, and they use the term peace as a front for their dodgy diplomacy or something a bit more absurd.
Hmm. I mean, I've just gone on to the Sovereign Military Order of Malta's Wikipedia page, and it looks like all of the photos, or most of the photos, are of important members of the order, but they look like they've been taken by the paparazzi, like some secretive government agency has been spying on things. Like there's a really grainy, low-resolution photo of Friar John T. Dunlap, 81st Prince and Grand Master, that looks like he's being surreptitiously excuse me, secretively photographed at some event.
Yeah, no, it's a good. I mean, I'm sure you could have like a 6 out of 10 IMDb action thriller movie based upon a conspiracy around the sovereign military order. But that's any ideas for any listeners who work in film production. Um, so the sovereign military order of Malta is slightly different, but is slightly separated from the Knights Hospitaller themselves. But it's sort of the order itself claims continuity with the chivalric order. So, what is the chivalric order then? It was founded in around the year. It says founded about 1099, but that's quite a specific year. By a man named Blessed Gerard Sasso in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So already we're going quite a way back, which is why one of the reasons I found it interesting that they are sort of still this organization. I mean, they've obviously their name has changed, but they're claiming continuity with an order that is founded upon uh, sort of it's like a part of this Christian version of Jerusalem that, of course, does not exist and has not existed for hundreds of years. But it was founded as a Catholic military order, and it had its headquarters in Jerusalem for about 200 years until they got essentially pushed out by the Ottomans, I believe. So, what would you like to know?
So these knights, they were not only crusaders, but they were like the original crusaders, or the most important or most powerful crusaders. Is this fair? Like when I'm playing the first Assassin's Creed game, and you have to run away from the kind of knights in with plate helmets until you've learnt all of the moves because they're just too powerful before then. That's them. Is that correct?
So, I don't know if there were. I can't be certain that there weren't other important knightly orders, but the organization that we're talking about was one charged with the defense of the Holy Land, which is again like that's particularly why I find it so strange that they sit on the modern day UN. That this is quite literally an organization that was created for the Crusades to keep Jerusalem under Christian control. So they were big and they were influential. If you look at the list of engagements, like that they
Oh wow.
have fought in a lot of battles. In general, it just the first one just says the Crusades, so presumably they fought in all of them. It's just interesting how they evolved over time because you could say that they lost because I mean they lost Jerusalem, but they still existed after they lost Jerusalem, and they existed for so long that in a sense they still exist today. So they've been very adaptive as an order. So they were forced out of Jerusalem, and for a while they were the sort of sovereign power on the now Greek island of Rhodes, which is sort of close to Turkey, and they operated from Rhodes for a while. They have a massive castle there, which I've actually seen. The walls are extremely high up. The idea of like trying to stage an invasion of that castle is crazy. I mean, they had a lot of resources for a long time. This order, presumably because they were the people to donate to. You know, if you are a important or wealthy Christian and you want to show your commitment to your faith, then this is the charity for you. Because they built massive castles all over. So they built that one in Rhodes, and they were there operating out of Rhodes for a while. But I think in the year 1522, so we're getting quite late for an order of knights now, but nonetheless there's still an order of knights. They got kicked off of Rhodes by the Ottomans as well. So for a while, they weren't actually sovereign over any territory, and that was until, let's see, I just want to make sure I get my facts right. See, I've learnt a little bit about them because I'm actually in Malta at the moment, and I have been for the last few weeks. And as I mentioned, I have been to Rhodes, so I've come across these guys before.
You've been treading the histories.
Yeah. So I just want to fact check, but my understanding is that they were granted the island of Malta by the King of Spain. I guess because at the time there wasn't really much on Malta, so okay. This was helped by the Pope. So in the year 1530, they had been kicked out of Rhodes for 7 years. So the Pope, Pope Clement VII, who was himself a knight. I don't know if this means himself a knight of the order, but he reached an agreement with Charles V, who was Holy Roman Emperor, King of Spain and Sicily, to provide the knights a permanent place to actually live. So they got the island of Malta and the island of Gozo, which is like a little island next to Malta. It's like nowadays it's part of the nation of Malta, and in exchange there is an annual tribute sent to Charles V, known as the Tribute of the Maltese Falcon, which, I mean, it sounds to me like I mean a literal falcon. So this was a trade for 2 islands in exchange for 1 falcon per year. So it doesn't sound like Charles V. Either he lacked leverage in this negotiation, or the islands didn't mean very much to him. I don't know what you think about that.
Or possibly the falcons meant a huge amount to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's another angle. I mean, it's interesting how often islands come up throughout all of these processes. Like, they're just sort of, in the same way that islands orbit the larger continents, right? The order of Malta seems to be orbiting the more established European powers all throughout history, and it just sort of island hops from place to place, before kind of eventually settling on Malta more permanently, and just kind of ingratiates itself where it can. There's on I think it's the Sovereign Military Order page. There's a hilarious one paragraph, a 2-sentence paragraph that says, on the 19th of September 1806, the Swedish government offered the sovereignty of the island of Gotland to the order, which is the island off the east coast of Sweden that I think has a lot of Finnish speakers.
Right.
But it says the offer was rejected since it would have meant the order renouncing their claim to Malta. It's just a 2-sentence summary of something that sounds incredulous. I mean, why would the Swedish government offer, Sweden of course being one of the bastions of Protestantism, and this being a Catholic organisation, offer one of its largest islands to the Catholic military order? Secondly, why would accepting the offer mean renouncing a claim to Malta, over which Sweden has no jurisdiction whatsoever? I want to know more about this random Swedish trade deal that was declined.
Yes.
It sounds like something out of Civ 5.
It's strange. It's not. I mean, for their entire existence, they're they've been like a Mediterranean military force, and then they're being offered this island nowhere near in the Baltic Sea. I'm wondering if like I mean, so one thing that seems to be going on with like where the knights end up being based. I think the thing about Rhodes and also Malta and potentially a bit Jerusalem itself is that I'm not sure for each of these places that at the time like the islands themselves were of much value aside from military and strategic. And so if you were a Christian monarch and you had your own territory and it had a load of like valuable arable land or whatever, um, it might be quite effective to donate an island that you don't really want to pay for to this knightly order, who will then also receive a load of funds from other Christian nations and from the Pope. So I feel like uh, donating an island is, as long as you remain a Christian country, sort of like a security deal. You know, you've contracted out um, anti-Islamic invasion to a different organization than your own state.
Yeah. I guess it's so strange though. There's a whole at the bottom of all of these pages. There's a one of those collapsible Wikipedia tables that stratifies all of the articles it has related to this topic by kind of element. So you know all the articles about organizations and auxiliaries and society and cultures and histories and important battles and that sort of thing, and it just goes on and on and on. They have an they have an embassy in Rome that Italy has given extraterritorial status to, meaning that it is treated as a separate country. But then when you go, hilariously, when you go on the sovereign military orders page, it has a whole line dedicated to area total 0 kilometers squared, brackets 0 square miles. Like, not even one, not even 1 square mile.
Yeah. Um, so another thing that jumped into my mind though is wondering if you're a fan of Napoleonic history.
I used to be a zealous zealous enthusiast for Napoleonic history. Um, I haven't studied it for a few years now, but yes, is the short answer.
So I don't know if you'd heard that it was actually Napoleon who was in the year 1798. Again, you're thinking this was, bear in mind, this organization was founded in 1099 as a military order. These are like these were medieval knights, and we're in the we're in the like late 18th century now, and the Order of Knights is still in control of Malta. Well, Napoleon captured it. Napoleon came here on his way to Egypt. He just came to Malta and captured it off of the knights. And so for the at that time and for all the time that Malta was controlled by the knights, the sort of head of the order, a grand master, was essentially in charge of the territory as well. So Napoleon, again, obviously came here because there's some strategic value, right? He wasn't. I don't think there was any like reason for the knights to take issue with Napoleon before this, but I guess it was just an easy target to benefit from. So he demanded Napoleon demanded that the Grand Master, who has a quite a long name, Ferdinand von Hompesch zu Bolheim, or something like that. He wanted to be able to use the port for water and supplies. And I mean, I'm just going on tangents here. The port, there's like a very, I mean, Malta's not very big, but like the side of the island where the capital Valletta is, there's just such a massive sprawling sort of set of ports. Um, I wonder. I think most of it was built by this time, so lots of places to put your ships, and actually not too difficult to defend as well. There's some high up fortifications with cannons with views over like the entire, um, like all of the inlets. But thankfully for the Knights of Malta, Admiral Nelson took Malta off of Napoleon, chasing down Napoleon. He captured Malta, and then I think he gave it back.
Hmm.
Did he give it back?
Good for him.
Yeah. So the Napoleon himself ruled Malta for about a week. I thought that's just an interesting little piece of Maltese history. Um,
And of course, all of this is made even more complicated by the fact that after the Reformation, all of these or this order and its Catholic auxiliaries were faced with this partial crisis of faith, where some people broke away and formed splinter groups and opposing orders, which were essentially designed in the same way, but just Protestant instead of Catholic. And normally those were called the Orders of St. John. And I happen to know this because I have done for a few years now volunteering
I
with
see where this is going.
St. John Ambulance, right?
Yeah.
Which is reasonably well known, at least in the medical communities of the Commonwealth and the English-speaking nations, which traces its various hierarchies and histories up to Anne, not the, because there are many, Order of St. John that's based in the UK, I believe. But there's like a German Order of St. John and a Swedish Order of St. John, and any kind of historically Protestant country has its Order of St. John. And I think the original Order of St. John was a breakaway faction of the Order of Malta and the Knights Hospitaller, because it was Catholic, and that was bad to them post-Reformation.
No, it hadn't crossed my mind, but it makes a lot of sense actually. The St. John Ambulance having this relationship. I mean, there is a. I mean, the just on another note, there was where does it come up? If you look at the top of the Knights Hospitaller page, there's also a redirect saying, for the Ukrainian volunteers, see Hospitallers Medical Battalion. So,
Oh, wow.
I don't know, there's a similar nomenclature for a number of different organizations. And
There's a whole Order of St. John disambiguation page as well. There are so many of them.
Yeah,
it's a fascinating sort of organization, even though it's so impenetrably opaque from the outside. Like, there's all this information on it across pages and pages across Wikipedia, and yet I feel like I know so little about it. It feels harmless, though. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's fine. Like, if I read the page for Amazon or Meta or Google or something, I feel like it's going to dark places. But when I read these pages, it feels fine. You know, it just feels like a fun bit of harmless history. Harmless now that they're not actually crusading.
Yeah, so I would like to be able to give a more detailed and accurate history lesson, but the nature of Spotlight is, I mean, I've heard of these guys and I know a bit about them. It's interesting to talk about them, but there are so many details, as there would be even if I had pre-read the entire article. There's a lot going on. But they've been hugely influential over like the the culture, the architecture. I mean, they built in terms of the island of Malta. They built the fortification that used to be the capital, Medina. They built they pretty much built Valletta. So much of the island was like built by them, in terms of what's still there, and it's still culturally influential. I think there's plenty of restrictions on construction near some of those areas that are more historic. So you can still see, if you walk along the streets of Valletta, you can imagine what it would have been like.
Wow. I mean, we can have a quick look at how militarily successful they were if I hover over like some of the lists of
Yeah.
battles. Battle of Amorgus, they won. Battle of Chios, they won. Battle of Rhodes in 1320, they were attacked but defended successfully. Adramyttion, they won. They're doing quite well so far. Battle of Paline, 1344, they doesn't tell me from the quick summary, but if I go in, yep, there you go. They won that as well. Imbros, 1347, they won. Megara, they won. They're doing quite well, at least in the 14th century. I don't know if I skip like later on into the 17th century.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, they won there as well. Although their commander got killed on the first day in that particular battle. So they didn't mess around, I guess. They were, at least at some point, definitely an effective military organization.
There were times. I mean, you could even say like their goal might have been to defend Jerusalem, but there are probably wider geopolitical reasons to support them as an order. For one thing, like they probably, I wouldn't be surprised if the existence of them in the Mediterranean did slow the spread of the Ottoman Empire. So it may have still served the whims of the Christian monarchs in Europe. But yes, sadly for them, they did uh, get pushed further and further west until they actually had nothing left. And I lied. When the British kicked out Napoleon, um, the British did not really give Malta back. It says here on another page that the knights were ousted by Maltese revolutionaries, aided by Great Britain. But you could say this is a tactical assistance of revolution, because Malta became a British protectorate for a long time. So we essentially just took it.
Well, that bit doesn't surprise me at
Yeah.
all,
In
to
fact,
be honest.
it became a British colony in 1830. So only
I
13
was
years
thinking,
later.
I was thinking when you said that you thought that Nelson may have given it back. I was thinking, please, just this once, let that be
No,
true.
no, and of course no. It was. I mean, I knew it had been part of the British Empire, but the details evade me. But it was in 1964 that Malta gained its independence. Interesting. I'm just looking. There was a constitutional referendum, and the new constitution was approved by 54.5%. So
Wow, that's actually closer than you'd expect for an independence
yes,
like
yeah,
referendum.
and also I find interesting because it varies greatly with like uh, countries that used to be part of the British Empire, but Malta as a country, they still have in some places red telephone boxes. They still use some red post boxes, still with the what is it with the GR on, I think. King George.
Yeah.
So they haven't actually got rid of those things. I think it's still quite big for Malta. Like it's got a lot of interesting history, and I don't think that they have any particular grievances with the British. Interestingly, um, I mean English is one of the official languages of the country as well, so a lot of people speak it, and I guess it's quite good to attract British interest. It might be quite economically productive, as well as the fact that like if you've got a load of people that speak English, it's quite nice to be um, to have a sort of foothold diplomatically in terms of tourism, in terms of maybe where people can move for work. It's certainly a common thing. So people do might be studying and then spend bits of time in either Malta or the UK. Um, there are a lot of universities that have programs like that. I think even in terms of healthcare delivery in Malta, there are some agreements between Maltese and British hospitals that for certain types of procedure, patients will actually be flown to the United Kingdom for complex procedures. So we're actually still pretty close with them. So it sort of ended with a cordial friendship. This is proof that you can be friends after a breakup.
Absolutely. Geopolitics often reflects on real life. Um, Excellent. Well, on that note, I think this brings us to a close of our meandering through the Wikipedia corridors of the Knights of the Hospitaller and its subsidiaries and successors. Um, any closing thoughts from you, Will?
Um, have a great week.
Fantastic. And we will see you next time.
Bye.